Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. My name is Taylor Rockwell. I continue to host while Ryan Bailey remains on vacation. Joe is returning from MLS All-Star. He is a traveling man. No longer a traveling man is Graham Ruthven. Graham Ruthven is here to talk Women's Euros, to talk MLS All-Star, to talk some transfers that have happened, and some transfers that might happen. Spoiler alert, they somehow all involve Liverpool. Who knows how, who knows why. Graham Ruthven, it's been a week. We've missed you.
Hello, Taylor Rockwell. Yes, I'm back. How are you? I see you've been left holding the baby again, except this time the baby is me and not Joe, for once.
Yes. Joe is a very calm baby who just kind of like wants what he wants, but doesn't really ever throw the toys out the pram. Graham is similar as long as you like put him to bed with a various soccer shirt, various kits, then he is fine.
Well, I mean,
That's
on the basis of your Instagram, Taylor, your kids' lives look really fun. So if you want to teach me how to use like a power tool, I'm fine with that. To be honest, that needs to happen. I'm 33 years old and no one's done that for me. So
hey, man, I'm happy to. I would love to. Yeah, which one are you alluding to? The using the chop saw? Probably not that one. Maybe using the magnifying glass.
Which one are we referring to? Which power tool are we talking about? Teaching my children to use.
She knows how to use a drill. She's used the chop saw with a lot of supervision.
Already ahead of me.
We did recently learn to burn wood with a magnifying glass, which I'm sure won't come back to haunt me when the house is on fire. Yeah, it's fun, man. It's fun to teach them how to use power tools within reason. She did see me using a chainsaw the other day and had some questions, and that is where I draw the line. That feels like it could go very wrong very quickly.
To give you an idea, Taylor, of my practical skills, for YouTube viewers, this picture above the scarf thing on my display behind me, I thought about putting that up using a power tool and then decided to use command strips, which was a great idea until I was sitting at this desk one day and the picture fell off the wall and basically almost knocked me out. And then I just got my dad to hang it up. So,
yeah, man, that is the ever-present fear of like, I'm pretty sure I went into the stud on that one, but if not, that thing's coming down. We'll see how it goes. You did all the decorating of your office, though, right? Including with the wood paneling? I feel like you're more than capable of some handy things.
Yeah, definitely didn't get my carpenter brother to do all that, yeah.
You could have taken the credit, Graham. That would have been fine.
I mean, yeah, I did it all. It was great.
There we go. Well, you're going to get most of the credit today for a lot of what we're going to be talking about because Graham is back to his usual, watching soccer 20 hours a day, and the other 4 hours perusing kits online for which ones would be best to purchase. We're going to start with the Women's Euros, a tournament we have not discussed really at all on the show. We've had a question about that from Rafael Pineda. Basically, respectfully, why has TSS not provided your consistently enlightening insights for the ongoing and compelling 2025 Women's UEFA Championship? A very fair question, something we debated. And the answer is essentially, with the number of tournaments, like basically the Gold Cup and the Club World Cup, combined with vacations, combined with a massive summer next summer for us for 2026. I think we kind of felt like we needed to be able to have vacations and breaks. It felt like we wouldn't be able to cover the tournament in the detail that we kind of usually attempt to go for. I think we were going to be like already too late to do detailed previews at that point.
Yeah.
And so it sort of felt, rightly or wrongly, like one in which there also, with no U.S. involvement, was going to be slightly less interest in. And so I think we felt like that's one where we're just going to have to kind of hold our hands up and say we wish we could cover it in detail and in depth. We just don't have the bandwidth or ability at present.
Yeah, and that US point, Taylor, was key, right, to our decision-making process. We had 3 tournaments overlapping this summer, and as a US-focused podcast, we decided that the Gold Cup, obviously, was our number one priority. Then we had the Club World Cup, which was being hosted in the US, featured 3 US teams as well. So that was kind of like 1 and 2 in our pecking order. And then the other thing that made it difficult was those 2 tournaments were well underway by the time the Women's Euros kicked off. So like, when are we doing our previews? And so unfortunately, also we're a team of 4 people. Like, there's not, I mean, Auckland City, they've gone away home from helping me out over the course of the summer. So it's just the 4 of us. And so, yeah, we just didn't feel like we could commit the correct level of coverage to the Women's Euros, which was a shame because obviously in the past we've I think the last Women's Euros we did quite a lot of coverage of that tournament. So yeah, that's been unfortunate.
And it is because it also has been one that I've been sad not to get to talk about as much because there have been really good games, and not just with the perennial favorites, but with, let's say, like host nation Switzerland, who's pulled off some surprises and done better than I think expectation might have been going into the tournament. Obviously, they are knocked out by Spain, which is, if you're going to lose, probably the team to lose to and feel okay about it. Yeah, right? So, like, I thought they were fun. I thought Italy were fun. I thought some of the group stage games were truly exciting and made things really interesting, including France's win over England that seems to have both galvanized England and also made them a little bit nervous and apprehensive in some games. Like, I just think there have been a lot of narratives there, but also just a lot of really good play and some spectacular moments. So it's been a very fun tournament. I'm glad we get to finally talk about it, Graham.
Yeah, another thing to mention is I think last night the Germany-Spain semi-final that we're going to talk a little bit about, it was the game that broke the record for the attendance for this tournament from beating the record of the last Euros. And when did we speak about the Women's Euros? Oh, it was the 101 episode that we did in the Women's Euros. So I guess we did do a little bit of a preview there in a sense. I said something to the effect of, well, it's not going to have the attendances of the last Euros. And what I meant by that was mainly you're not going to get a sold-out Wembley because just the size of the stadium are smaller. But just great to see a country like Switzerland where there were concerns over funding. I remember a year out from the tournament, they were worried that it was going to be a bit of a damp squib. And that hasn't been the case at all. Every single stadium that I've seen has been packed. There's been great atmospheres and great games. That's going to culminate in a final between what is probably the two best, or certainly there's a rivalry between England and Spain that's carried over from the last Women's World Cup, and so that game on Sunday is going to be really interesting.
So let's talk about how both of those sides got here, Graham, starting with England getting past Italy in the semifinal. It's Chloe Kelly again. It's a very late winner for England. Again, they avoid penalties, which is certainly a positive. What have you made of Sarina Wiegman's team thus far?
So England at this tournament have been a complete conundrum because, with the exception of the thumping of the Netherlands in the group stage, which was a landmark result, they needed a performance like that after losing to France, where I thought they were pretty comprehensively played off the pitch in that opening game, and there's some real questions about the team and Sarina Wiegman coming out of that match. With the exception of that game against the Netherlands, they haven't played very well, yet they are in the final. The two comebacks against Sweden and Italy in the knockout rounds were incredible. The game against Sweden in particular, they looked dead and buried when they were 2-0 down. I thought England were going home at that point. And against Italy as well, a couple of nights ago, didn't look like an equaliser was coming. And in both games, England were really lacking creativity. I mean, Alessia Russo, she puts in so much work as the focal point in the attack, but at this tournament, I've just felt like England have rarely got bodies up and around her. And in general, in both the Sweden and Italy games, England were just really sloppy. They were slow in possession, their touches were bad, and that has been the story for the majority of the games that England have played. They've had the lead for 5 minutes of the knockout rounds and are in the final. Squeezed through in penalties against Sweden, by the way, at like the worst penalty shoot I've ever seen in my life. I feel like we should mention that. Yeah, I'm not sure what was going on. There was a point in this tournament where I think it was something like 15 out of 20 penalties, including shootout penalties, had been missed. Thankfully, the conversion rate has been a little bit better since then. But the other part of the story for England has been Sarina Wiegman's changes, which have turned games on their head. So the two players primarily that have changed games have been Chloe Kelly, who you mentioned there, Taylor, and Michelle Agyeman, who is this teenager who was brought in as a bit of a wild card, a bit of a sort of Theo Walcott figure for this England team. She was a ball girl for England just 4 years ago. She's been brought into the England team. She's been used off the bench, and to great effect. She's the one who gets the equaliser against Italy the other night. She's made an impact in other games as well. And then Chloe Kelly, there's a really interesting debate around Chloe Kelly because the debate is there a difference between having her as an impact sub and then simply her being like their best player who really should be just starting games at this point? And watching Chloe Kelly at this tournament, she just seems so much quicker than anyone else in that England attack. Her crossing is brilliant. I mentioned earlier there's a bit of a creativity issue with this England team. Not when Chloe Kelly is on the pitch. So the question of Sarina Wiegman is, she talks about having finishers. She's a big believer in, and I know all managers say this about you. If you're on the bench, you're still an important part of the squad. I do truly believe Sarina Wiegman sees it that way, and she kind of holds back players to the point that she feels they'll make the greatest impact. But with Chloe Kelly in particular, if she does not start that final against Spain on Sunday, I think she will be entitled to feel aggrieved because of the impact she's made in games.
Who would you sit then if you're Sarina Wiegman? Would you stick with your kind of 4 attackers and just start her and go extra attacking? That feels like it could be dangerous against Spain. So I'm assuming you're sitting one of Hemp, Toon, James, or Russo.
Yeah, Lauren James. I think she came off at half-time against Italy with some sort of injury, and I think towards the end of last season as well, she was maybe carrying a bit of a knock coming into this tournament. She's played a lot of minutes for England and just frankly has not looked herself. Lauren James is an absolute superstar for club and country. She hasn't really been that superstar at this tournament, and Chloe Kelly, when you look at the performances she's putting in, I mean, I just think purely on the basis of her crossing as much as anything else, her cross for the equaliser that leads to the Ajman goal is an incredible cross. And I was watching that game with my wife Lucy on holiday, so she will attest. As soon as that ball leaves Chloe Kelly's foot, I said something to the effect of like, here we go, or like, there's a chance coming. You could just tell, like, she's got that sort of delivery on her. And if you have players like Ajaman, who has an incredible penalty box presence, or even Alessia Russo, who's like an orthodox focal point in the attack, it makes sense to have someone to get service into them from wide areas. And Chloe Kelly, at this moment in time, is that player over Lauren James.
For me, it's a really interesting sliding doors moment for Lauren James, because I think in the first 20 minutes or so of that opening game against France, she was looking to be the difference maker. There's moments where she goes on these like 20, 30, 40-yard runs where France aren't really able to close her down fast enough, and Lauren James alone seems like she is going to be facilitating attacking play, taking players on, and then finding really good out passes or through balls. And then France score the 2 and kind of tighten up, and England don't have as much room to work with. And suddenly Lauren James looked more inefficient than anything else, and I feel like that's kind of continued. So I will be sad if she doesn't start. At the same time, I share your perspective that Chloe Kelly can be such a difference maker. Maybe a difference maker off the bench, but maybe you start her from the jump and see what she can do. Before we turn our attention to England's opponent, we should spare a moment for Italy, who surprised. I didn't see them making the semifinal of this competition. No. They've come on leaps and bounds, certainly, and there has been strong development. But to make it this far, I think, is very much to their credit.
Yeah, and the reason that they made it this far was they pulled off a shock result against Norway in the quarterfinals. Norway, who had a really poor tournament. I watched just through luck of them being on the TV. When I was watching the TV, I ended up watching, I think, every one of Norway's games and was never really impressed, even in the games that they won in the group stage. Never thought they were up to much, which is kind of the Norway story in the past few tournaments. They've got some of the best players in the world, and yet it never seems to come together for them on the big stage. But it did come together for them, for Italy in this tournament. I doubt Ryan would share this view, but it was impossible not to feel sorry for Italy with the way it all fell apart for them right at the end of the semi-final against England, because Italy in the women's game aren't accustomed to getting this far at a major tournament. They have never made a World Cup or a Euros final, but women's football is growing a lot in Italy, and the national team is getting better. And until the equaliser, they had done such a good job of restricting space in between the lines. They posed a threat in quick transition. The Bonansea goal to put them ahead was brilliant, and not just for the emphatic finish into the roof of the net, but for the play down the right wing to create the chance to get to the byline. The cross then takes, I think, a little bit of a deflection. Lucy Bronze is unable to clear it, and then Bonansea at the back post just rifles it home. So this is an Italy team that will still be hurting a couple of days on, but they can look back at a really positive tournament, and they are 100% on an upward trajectory as a football nation in the women's game right now.
Graham, I know that you're very surprised to see Spain advance to the final. Who could have seen these plucky underdogs making it through? They have been the Spain that we expected, scoring plenty of goals, keeping some clean sheets along the way. 3 of their 5 games they've kept clean sheets, including against host nation Switzerland in the first knockout round, then obviously Germany in the semifinal, a 1-0 win there. Spain pretty good, it turns out, Graham.
Yeah, and not to give myself too much credit, because so many people were saying this and anyone could have seen it, but I did say before the tournament I thought there was a chance Spain are just going to stroll this whole thing, and obviously they've got England on Sunday, who will surely put up some sort of contest. But yeah, Spain have been very good at this tournament. This was the semi-final on Wednesday night. That was the toughest game that Spain have faced at this tournament so far, by some distance, because Germany really limited them. And I won't lie, it wasn't the most entertaining game to watch as a neutral, because it didn't really, the pattern of the game was set very early on and didn't really shift. It never moved into another phase of the match. So basically Germany were staying compact, they were closing up space between the lines, and then they were able to play in quick transition. They had a lot of joy doing that, particularly through Hoffman as the centre forward, who was dropping deep and drifting around, dragging Spanish defenders out from that high line that they're already set in, and that then allowed Germany to get runners forward from midfield, and they had to they forced Katakol into her first saves of the entire tournament. That is a statistic, a fact. Katakol, the Spanish goalkeeper, had not had to make a save in this tournament until the semi-final. I read that she hadn't had to make a save since the March window, I think, for Spain. So for months, that's how good Spain are. And I think the most impressive thing about Germany in this game was how they physically seemed to have, if not the beating, they were able to match up against Spain in midfield. So that unit of Clara Bull, De Brits, Sensa and Gila Brand was just really effective at stopping Spain from playing through in that midfield. And in that midfield, of course, you've got Alexia Putellas, you've got Bonmati, you've got Caldente dropping into the midfield as well. So you're talking about like the best players in the world, and Germany really matched up well against them in that area of the pitch. But then Aitana Bonmati comes up with a bit of magic in stoppage time. You could maybe look at Katrin Berger's positioning, and she did apologise to her teammates after the match. She'd like to be a little bit closer to her near post, I think it's fair to say. But Bonmati, she knows what she's doing from that position. I don't think it's a cross. I think the trajectory of that ball, it's a shot. She's 100% shooting from that position. And so I'm inclined to give the credit to Bonmati, who, keep in mind, had viral meningitis the week before the start of the tournament. She comes back and scores the winner in the semi-final to send Spain through to the final. I bet she does something in the final as well, being the best player in the world.
And so it feels like we know what Spain are going to do. We know how they're going to play, how they're going to approach that final. Maybe there'll be some wrinkles in there, but largely we expect them to have the ball, to try to create opportunities, to try to pull England apart, and then find the kind of passing options to score some ideally easy goals, but maybe some tricky goals because they've got the ability there. For England, Graham, what do you think they could do to nullify a lot of what Spain want to throw at them, but still be potent in the attack? I don't see them really sitting off entirely, but I'm not sure that would be the worst idea. I'm not sure what Sarina Wiegman should go for in this one.
Yeah, it's difficult. Honestly, I don't know what you do to match up against this Spanish team, but I think it would be a good idea to drop that defensive line, not only to close up the space in behind that Spain want to get into, but to close up the lines between the defence and the midfield, but then also to give England open space to attack in the other direction, which is what Germany did to relatively well in that semi-final. And Spain's high defensive line, look, you said, 3 clean sheets in 5 games, so there's a purpose to it, and that is to compact the pitch, and they're obviously brilliant at sort of the short possession, quick possession stuff. But we did see in the game against Belgium in the group stage, which Spain won 6-2, so they scored 6 in that game, but they did concede twice, and Belgium were able to hit them in quick transition, and I think that's what England are going to have to do in this game. I think they're going to have to bulk up their midfield a little bit. I think they want to learn the lessons from what I just outlined with Germany, what they did in the semi-final. And then I'll mention her name again, Chloe Kelly is... When I watch her for this England team, she looks like the fastest player on the pitch, and so having that bit of pace from the start, I think, would be a good idea against this Spain team. But yeah, of course, this is a rematch of the World Cup final, which Spain won 2 years ago at the Women's World Cup, and I frankly expect a similar outcome on Sunday.
A couple scenarios, Graham. Is it obviously you never want to concede early. For a neutral, is it a terrible thing if Spain score in the first 10 minutes? Does that sort of kill the game off in your mind? Because it means England will have to come out, try to make something happen, and that feels like they will then be wide open for more goals? Or does it make for a more compelling game?
At the risk of stating the obvious, I think it makes a more competitive game if England are able to hang. Because if Spain are able to get that early goal and England get drawn out, and then there's even more space for Spain to play into, and all of a sudden you're looking at a 3 or 4-0 and the game's done after 60 minutes. Obviously that's not going to be much interest. But if England are able to impose themselves on Spain to any great degree, then yeah, that would be a good thing for the game.
And I'm aware we're talking about England here, so, grain of salt from Graham. But conversely, does England scoring inside the first 10 minutes, does that make it a better game? Or are we so likely to then get England dropping so deep and Spain just trying to create that? Does that, in its own way, create a less fun game for the neutral?
I think that's exactly what happens. I think England will just bunker in that scenario. But, and this might just be me, particularly in a game like a final or a semi-final, I think the nervous tension of a team trying to break down a bunkering opponent can be quite exciting and quite entertaining. So I might take that over the first scenario of Spain scoring early, in which case I might think they'll just run away with it. England scoring early at least creates the situation of jeopardy.
Would you take either of those over 0-0 after 15 minutes? As a neutral?
Yes.
Okay.
Would I take a goal in 15 minutes over no goals? Yes. I'll take that.
I think it just depends on how delicately poised it is, how back and forth it is. Because sometimes goals can bring a game to life, and sometimes they can kind of kill the momentum, strangely enough. Saying this entirely as a neutral, because I'm pretty sure Spanish supporters would like their team to score. So too would England supporters. Graham, do you have any predictions on how this one goes?
3-1 Spain. I think it's going to be relatively comfortable. This is going to sound like sour grapes coming from a Scot. I said to you in that 101 episode that we did that I wouldn't go as far as saying I wanted England to win the last Euros, but I could recognise the role of that team in growing the sport in the UK, and it was an incredible cultural moment. I honestly don't think England have been that good at this tournament. I think they've played one good game and then had quite a favourable draw. As good as Italy are or were in that game and in this tournament, they're not a superpower in the way that Germany are, as Spain came through in the semi-final. So I just think Spain are going to be relatively comfortable.
All right, we'll see how it plays out. I think that's a fair prediction, though, Graham. We're going to come back and talk about MLS All-Star. We'll talk about some kit deals and maybe some transfers as well. Back soon. Welcome back to the Total Soccer Show. We're going to talk MLS All-Star, and in solidarity for Lionel Messi, Graham is just not going to show up for this segment. We thought he might. We had told everybody he would. But actually, secretly, Graham told me last week that he would not be here for this segment. So it's just going to be me talking this whole time. I really backed myself into a corner. Graham, please come back.
What's happened, Taylor, is you know how you can see my mic moving up and down? There's a giant dog under my desk as well. I have the full
You're the one
experience
holding him
right
hostage.
now.
I see. Yes, that is, strangely enough, the talking point from MLS All-Star. Match in which the MLS team beat the Liga MX team 3-1 with some good goals along the way, some fun play. It felt like everybody at Austin was having a good time. But there was the major narrative that Lionel Messi and Jordi Alba chose not to participate in the All-Star game, though it had been mooted that they would. It felt like Don Garber tried to kind of say a lot of stuff without saying anything. The standing rule is that if a player opts out of All-Star, they are then suspended for the next regular season game. I think that might even extend to injury. I forget how it works exactly. But basically, if you don't play All-Star, you can't play the next game, ... unless you're Lionel Messi and Jordi Alba, in which case we'll see what ends up happening. But this
in
has
which case
been...
you qualify for the next Club World Cup, I think, is their rule.
That's how it's a weird, bizarro rule, but it's a rule all the same, Graham. But that is, am I correct in saying, the kind of dominant headline talking point from All-Star?
Yeah, the talking point is about a player or two players who didn't play in the game, which is unfortunate for MLS. I mean, look, I don't think this is a great look for the league. In the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter because the All-Star game doesn't matter. But the All-Star game is meant to be a showcase for MLS, and so to not have Messi and Alba there as well, to not have them there does devalue the whole thing. And watching Garber squirm in that press conference trying to explain away this the absence of the best player in the league, the best player in the history of the league, when, let's not kid ourselves, Don Garber wants him at the All-Star game, and to have that rule about the suspension, and it looks like MLS is not going to sanction Messi for that. It's just a bit embarrassing. It just feels like the league bending over for Messi, which, look, they've done that a lot over the last couple years to the tune of millions of dollars. But nonetheless, it doesn't mean too much, but it's not a great look.
It's really not, especially with the Rodrigo de Paul transfer that seems likely to happen, which, depending on your perspective, some would say is a genius bit of business and maneuvering by Inter Miami to find a way to make this happen so that he can be under the designated player threshold, and negotiating with Atleti to make an extension happen so that then the loan can happen. It's a good bit of business, but it is obviously against the spirit of the league. That's one side of the equation. The other side would be the league is being too slow to expand salary budgets and roster rules, and that maybe some owners don't want them to because they don't want to have to spend more. And so for ownership that does want to spend more, that does want to be more competitive and be more sort of bold in their business, they're kind of finding ways to make it happen, and it feels like the league is sort of letting them while trying to make everybody else happy as they can. But it just leads to that feeling of imbalance. It leads to that feeling of Miami can sort of do what they want, and there's no real way to check them. and I don't think there is a way to check them. So those two players not being an All-Star is significantly less significant than Rodrigo de Paul somehow not being a designated player. But it all feels like kind of part of the same thing, which is there's one team that has some rules, and then there's a lot of other teams that have more rules.
Yeah. And Taylor, do you think there's anything cultural with Messi and Alba kind of thinking to themselves, like, I'm not doing All-Star, like that doesn't, because I do think, well, I've been covering American soccer for a long time now, and so I've grown accustomed to it. Like, that meme, the European mind can't comprehend. All-Star game has to be up there as one of the things, and even I still don't fully understand it. Like I quite like the way that other sports do it. I know the NBA has done it in the past, or maybe still does it, with like Team LeBron versus Team Durant or whatever. Yeah. I that's sort of what I'd like MLS to do, because I just think it leans further into the whole thing being about having fun and not taking it too seriously. And I love the skills challenge. Like, the skills challenge is what I think this thing is really about now at this point. But what I don't understand is watching this game. And I didn't watch it live. I couldn't quite stomach the 4 a.m. This game would have finished at 4 a.m. my time. I will pass on that when it's All-Star. But I did see the highlights. And you've got fans in like Austin shirts cheering a goal scored by a Nashville striker assisted by an LAFC player. And I don't fully understand what the like collective fandom is. Like, do fans really feel invested in an MLS team proving it's better than a Liga MX team? Clearly some do, and I'm not here to tell anyone that they shouldn't feel a certain way or have a good time. I personally just don't really get that. So is there a chance that Messi and Alba feel the same as me and are like, I don't really understand this thing, I'm just going to focus on playing out of Miami games?
Yes, I think there is. I'm not sure it's for the reasons you've outlined there, because I do think that there is probably something to, like, we love a 2-0, we hate a Rafa Marquez. I think Americans enjoy beating Mexican opposition. I think like that is our biggest rival historically on the football pitch. So to be able to get that win, I do feel like you are going to cheer an opposition striker who is now suddenly playing for your team, albeit for a one-off exhibition game. But for Messi and Alba, yeah, I think there's probably a little bit of like, what is this thing and what do we have to do and how many media obligations and interviews are we going to have to do? But there is also the fact that, as Joe pointed out earlier in the week, that like this isn't happening in the middle of the season. This isn't sort of the obvious mid-season break, and you can point to Club World Cup for part of the reason why that's the case. But there are teams that have like 7 games left at this point. And so to have an All-Star game that then means you're going to have some teams near the end of the season and other teams have a significant number of games to play in very short order. This is a point that's been made a few different times in our Discord, that you just have players that are going to play like 4 games in 11 days. And I think, or could have had to if the schedule had kind of gone the way it did. But in the end, like, I think if you're Messi and Alba, you look at kind of how many games you've already played, plus the Club World Cup, plus the run-in for the rest of the season, and then you've got playoffs. You still are going to have the international break for Messi, like the September one at least, and it just feels like there's so many games there. Why would you fly to a different city for 4 days or whatever to then fly to a different city to play a game to then fly back? I can see how it wouldn't appeal and it wouldn't be the most desirable thing if you are trying to get a little bit of a rest after feeling this season in your older legs. It's just also kind of a burden that everybody else has to put up with. So it does feel, again, like, though I understand why those players wouldn't want to participate or would try to get out of being obligated to participate, I am also not sure it's that much of a joy for a lot of the players that did end up participating. And it's something that we've seen Zlatan skip in the past and then get suspended. And so then he shows up to I think Orlando one. He's there for like a half begrudgingly, and then he leaves. And I remember that one because when you went to the locker room post-game, he had been gone for about 40 minutes. He played his game, he went in, he showered, and he left. He was not doing any obligations. He was not doing any interviews. He was on about his day. I think there are some players who it felt like were enjoying it. Evander obviously tearing up the skills challenge. It felt like Diego Luna was kind of hyped to be there. And I think when you get the players that grew up with kind of all-star games, not that Evander did, but Diego Luna, I suspect, is more familiar with different all-star competitions around the United States. Maybe there is a feeling of like, hey, I get to be one of the elites. I get to kind of be seen as an all-star, as like a true next-level player for this league. And so I think there can be joy in that way. But if you are a designated player who's already won the World Cup, I'm not sure it carries that same level of significance.
Yeah, and Messi hasn't played in one of these in 3 years, technically, that he's been available. I think the first one he'd signed for like 2 weeks, and I remember the clamour for MLS to just be shameless and include him in the All-Star game, which would have been on brand for MLS, but they actually didn't the first time. And then last year would have been what off the back of like Copa America, and I was just checking the lineup there. I don't remember him playing in that game, and he didn't. And then this year he hasn't played, so. Off the back of that, it does then the next discussion point, and I know Joe and Jeff talked about this yesterday, but like, does MLS still need an All-Star game in 2025? Like, does it still serve a purpose besides like some media people getting together to have fun? Which, by the way, I'm in favour of. Someone please invite me one year. I love lanyards. I'd love an All-Star lanyard one year.
I suspect we will be at All-Star next year. Potentially, depending on how the World Cup goes, I guess that is the outlier there. But if it's in Charlotte, I feel like Ryan might make us all come.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that slumber party at
Ryan's and whatnot. Yeah, just have a slumber party with Ryan's daughters and make fun of him the whole time. I'd enjoy that.
Yeah, they've got the right idea.
Yeah,
but yeah, I don't know if the All-Star game really does anything to. I mean, in the past it was to grow the league, right? It was to play mainly a European opposition team and kind of showcase it to the rest of the world and be like, look how good our players are. And if Messi's now missing these games, I just don't know if it's still serving that purpose, especially if it's against Liga MX now. It doesn't even have the like European thing to show to the rest of the world.
That's where I disagree, because I think I hate it. There was like, we're playing an MLS or like a Manchester United preseason team.
I don't necessarily disagree with that.
Doesn't want to be here. Yeah, at least with like another league's All-Stars, there is a feeling of like the league versus the league, and if there's already that kind of inherent rivalry, it can be a little bit more, but I'm still not sure it's enough to truly move the needle. But I also don't think we need to go back to East versus West. I'm not sure that's going to get the job done.
No. So all I meant with the European thing was, if the purpose was to like showcase it to the rest of the world, then having it against a Liga MX team doesn't really serve that purpose. So what is the new purpose? I also agree, like, the games against the European teams were largely dreadful, and I do prefer this Liga MX All-Star kind of format. But I've lost sight of what the core purpose of it is. Like, what is this meant to achieve, particularly if Messi's not coming to these games? I mean, it's fun. Watching this game, or watching the highlights of this game, it seems like players are having fun. So maybe that is the sole purpose in 2025.
South America versus the world? Should that be the next All-Star? It's a team of South Americans versus a team of North Americans, Africans, Asians, and Europeans?
Yeah, sure. Why not? It's no more like tenuous than the current format that we've got.
I mean, that like, honestly, would you rather see just more kind of wild experimentation with an All-Star game, or would you rather they just scrap it entirely?
I'd like to see more experimentation. So, look, maybe they do it once and I don't like it, but I mentioned the sort of players picking their teams. Like, I like that draft element of it, where you maybe get a bit of rivalry between the two groups. Because at the moment, it just feels like, yeah, okay, as outsiders, we may think there's a rivalry between MLS and Liga MX, but those players don't know each other. They don't play against each other. There's no rivalry really on the pitch. So if you could create some of that by having like a team Messi and a team Boanga, and they pick their team and they draft their squads, I think that could be fun. You get another sort of, from MLS's marketing point of view, you get another event out of that. The draft itself would be something that people would watch. And I just think the skills challenge, It like sets the tone for. I know not everyone loves the skills challenge, but the skills challenge is fun. Like, it's not meant to be taken seriously. I even like, and look, maybe some people will disagree with me on this. This week they had like guests. They had Lindsay Heap, and hear me out on this one. I Show Speed was there, and honestly, I don't mind him being there. Like, it's meant to be fun, and whether we like it or not, he's a personality with like 50 million YouTube subscribers, so that he will draw a younger audience to that game. So that's an event that lends itself to that sort of experimentation. So that to then have like a full competitive game on the back of that feels like a weird disconnect between those two things.
All right, now you're selling me on it should just be like an NBA Jam style. There's certain areas of the pitch in the All-Star game where if you shoot from, it counts as 2 goals. Or like, it should just be like, maybe the ball's lit on fire at one point for a 10-minute period. Just, try different stuff and maybe experiment. Smaller goals, rotating goals. Why not? What else have we had suggested on the show? To add another goal, so you have 2 different goals you have to defend. Why not that?
Multi-ball.
Multi-ball, I like that. You add the 10 or 20 yards behind the goal, so you can dribble around and have possession behind the goal, like hockey style. Yeah, just play around with the format, play around with the structure of the game. No one's going to be mad about that, I'm sure. I will say this about the skills challenge. I think I have come around to the idea that it is a very fun competition that is super engaging to watch on television.
Yes.
And in person, maybe it is enjoyable if the crowd is really up for it and it's a really fun atmosphere. And it did seem like the Austin crowd were up for it and really getting into it. But having been to a few of them in person, it's really, really difficult to make up for the lulls as you're setting stuff up and resetting and moving players around and moving sort of challenges around. And you usually have, I think in DC, you had like MLS Next Pro goalkeepers playing goalie wars, which is like fine, but it's not really that engaging. And you're having like player interviews where you can't quite hear what they're saying. And it doesn't really like keep the drama going. But on TV, where you can break it out and you have some breaks, but then also with the commentators getting really into it, and they did for this All-Star Challenge, and it was really fun. It is really, really good viewing. It is a really good time.
It is.
And Evander just destroying everybody made it that much more engaging.
Yeah, and they can do more. Like, I want a foot race. I think Jeff might have said this on yesterday's episode, but I'm fully there with him. I want a foot race between all 30 teams. Not all at once. They nominate their fastest player, and then you just have like 100-meter sprint. I feel like they could do more things like that. So it's not perfect. Like, they could tweak it. But yeah, I think the skills challenge for me is where it's at. It's the bit of the... While I accept your point, Taylor, about live, it might be a little bit stilted, but as a TV event, it's really watchable.
Yeah, and I think since the majority of people are not in Austin watching this game, that's probably a fair thing if you're making it better for television. So long live the skills challenge. Long live the All-Star game? Unless you're Lionel Messi, in which case, what's the All-Star game? I didn't get the invite. Sorry, I didn't know. My bad. Yeah. Can I still attend? Or no? Okay.
Long live the All-Star game until I get my lanyards, and then they can get rid of it.
All right. On that note, we're going to take one more break. We'll come back and talk about Marcus Rashford to Barcelona, a move that I did not think was going to happen, and yet here we are. Back soon. Welcome back to the Total Soccer Show. Graham, that's a pig flying through the air, I see. It feels very frosty in hell because Marcus Rashford has moved to Barcelona, a move that when we briefly mentioned it last week, I think I very sarcastically said that feels like a move that his agents are trying to manufacture and less so one that Barcelona are trying to pursue. And to be fair, there were other options they were going for. Those did not work out. And so here we are now. Marcus Rashford, officially a Barcelona player, at least for this season.
Yeah, he has joined on a season-long loan. Barcelona are reportedly picking up all of his wages, although Rashford has taken a pay cut, which it's confusing to me. Yeah. Go on, Taylor.
Well, from what I've read, this is probably my bias showing. And I have no bias really against Marcus Rashford. I think I just have inherent bias on the part of Manchester United. And the easy narrative there, I think, again, from his representatives, is he's willing to take a pay cut because he's so desperate to play and to play for Barcelona. The counterpoint to that would be, I believe, his wage was already reduced by 25% because Manchester United didn't qualify for the Champions League. And foreign taxes are lower. Basically, if you are not a Spanish citizen but a resident of Spain or a domestic resident of Spain, you're paying a lower tax rate. So those two things combined, I think it ends up being that basically he is getting paid the same amount that he would have at Manchester United.
Right, yeah, I did have questions about that. I haven't seen it reported, the exact breakdown of what he's getting paid for Barcelona, but I did have questions over how did that contractually and legally, how is he taking a pay cut without signing a new contract with Manchester United? And so my theory was that Barcelona had said, okay, we'll pay 75% of his wages, and Man United had said, fine, but we're not paying you the other 25%, and there was some kind of verbal agreement or gentleman's agreement.
Effectively true, because they didn't qualify for the Champions League. So you can remove that 25%, and then maybe the taxable income is a little bit different. It sounds like the best estimates are that he was on 19.5 million euros a year before bonuses. That includes bonuses, excuse me. And now the pay cut would put him around 14 million euros before bonuses. So maybe there's some other incentives in there. We'll see how that balances out. Either way, that makes him one of the biggest earners at the club alongside Lamine Yamal and Robert Lewandowski. And it means that with that salary, Barcelona will have to clear even more money off the books before they are able to register him, which is and has been the sticking point for Barcelona signings this season.
And that's how they end up signing Marcus Rashford in the first place, because Barcelona's first choice was Nico Williams. They thought that deal was going to happen. Everyone thought that deal was going to happen, and then essentially Nico Williams' representatives were unsure that Barcelona were going to be able to register him. They wanted a similar clause to the one that Dani Olmo had in his contract, which was, if people remember, 12 months ago, he had a clause in his contract that if Barcelona were unable to register him, he could leave Barcelona for free and sign as a free agent for another team. Barcelona refused to insert that clause into Nico Williams' contract, and so he turned around and within 24 hours of that discussion with Barcelona signed a 10-year contract extension with Athletic Club, which was surprising, not least to Barcelona, who had no wind of that happening until they saw the announcement video from Athletic Club. So he was their first choice, has been for the last 12 to 18 months. Their second choice was Luis Diaz, and Liverpool came back and said, we want like 70 million euros plus for Luis Diaz. That priced Barcelona out of the market, and so Rashford is their third choice. There's a good article by Andy Mitten for The Athletic on Barcelona's long-standing interest in Marcus Rashford and how this is either the third or the fourth time they've tried to sign him in the last 5 to 6 years. So there is a long-standing interest. They remember Marcus Rashford from that night at the Camp Nou in the Europa League, which was probably the high watermark from Marcus Rashford and certainly for Erik ten Hag as Manchester United manager, where they drew 2-2 against Barcelona in that game. They then beat Barcelona at Old Trafford in the return leg, and that was the best season of Marcus Rashford's career. I think he scored 30 goals in that one season in all competition. So Barcelona are counting on being able to revive Marcus Rashford to being that player again. But this is a real career reckoning for Marcus Rashford, because I think there is a world where he is a good fit for this Barcelona team. He is most dangerous in quick transition. He likes to play at speed into space, and Barcelona do plenty of that under Hansi Flick. Hansi Flick is also going to expect Rashford to work hard and contribute defensively and press high and hard in matches. And if Marcus Rashford did those things, he'd still be a Manchester United player. So that's where this is a real reckoning for Rashford, because if this doesn't work out for him, I don't think his reputation, at this point, his reputation from 5 years ago or 3 years ago is the thing that's sustaining him. That's the reason clubs like Barcelona are still interested. If this fails for him this season at Barcelona, I don't think he's going to get another opportunity in another platform like this, and looking ahead to the rest of his career, he's going to have to take a pretty sizable step down. So it's a kind of do or die moment for him.
How much support are you going to show, Graham? Are we going to get a Rashford Barcelona jersey on your back anytime soon?
Maybe not a Rashford Barcelona jersey, but YouTube viewers might be wondering what this shirt is. I wore this to make Taylor happy or sad. I can't quite decide at this point, but it's I'm showing the camera right now for audio listeners. It's a Marcus Rashford Manchester United shirt from when he was a national hero and had that campaign to get all the school kids free meals during COVID. So I still remember him for that.
You should. And you asked me before we started recording how it makes me feel, and I was surprised that my honest answer is sad, because he did feel like he was going to be a legend. He felt like he was going to be a very good kind of face of the club, leader of the club, and it's just very much gone the wrong way. And then it doesn't really go the right way either for him at Villa. Injury is partially to blame there, but at the end of the day, that they don't exercise the loan buy obligation or option and end up letting him come back to Manchester United. It just feels like that's another sort of blow against him, so that now when he's in that bomb squad, that would have felt inconceivable a few years ago, and now it felt like, that's kind of how things are going. But if he's at Barcelona and tearing it up and looking really good, I don't look forward to it's another player who looks better once he leaves Manchester United. But I also wouldn't be wholly surprised. I'll be a little surprised, though, because they're basically asking him to do some things that he did not want to do at Manchester United, as you've already pointed out, including playing centrally on occasion and kind of deputizing for Robert Lewandowski when he needs a break. Yeah. That isn't really a thing that he wanted to do for Manchester United or looked particularly solid at doing. So if he goes to Barcelona and does it, credit to him, credit to Hansi Flick, but it's also, I think, for me, a Manchester United supporter, a bit more of an eye roll than anything else. But I think a lot of this depends on if he's able to be registered, which is still the looming issue here, and it is the reason why Nico Williams doesn't agree to go, as you've already said. 2 points there, Graham. Number one would be, with Deco, the sporting director, declining to insert that clause for Nico Williams, the way they did with Dani Olmo, I don't see a way in which that isn't a very damning choice, by Deco. Because you could, I guess, make an argument that like maybe he didn't want to be held hostage by the player. Maybe he thinks it's like a bad look. I don't really know, but the only way I can see that is basically him saying, we don't know if we're going to be able to register you. And if we can't, we don't want you going back to Bilbao or going to Real Madrid or something and making us look wholly foolish. And so I'm not going to agree to that clause. Like, it doesn't, if I'm a Barcelona supporter, that does not fill me with confidence.
Yeah, and the fact of the matter, in terms of what these two signings or what Rashford contrasted with Nico Williams does for Barcelona as a team, they're two completely different players. Mm-hmm. So there's a really good article by Scouted, which I would recommend as like a newsletter. They're really good at kind of doing analysis of players. And basically the question with Nico Williams was, and I think Joe has maybe mentioned this in the show in the last season, Nico Williams, his numbers, his like surface level numbers are not actually that great, and they certainly weren't for Athletic Club this season. And so the question is like, well, what is he good at? And the TLDR of this article was that Nico Williams plays a game that is super conducive to having better players around him, which is maybe true of all players, but they had this deep data that laid out how goals and assists don't illustrate how good Nico Williams is. And he's more of a creative. He's like the pass before the pass sort of guy. And so when he's with Spain, he has all these other superstars to benefit from his play, and all those same Spanish superstars play for Barcelona. So the idea was he'd be able to carry it over into Barcelona fairly easily. Whereas Marcus Rashford, yeah, okay, he plays on the left side of the attack, but Marcus Rashford is like a finisher. He's a forward. He's not a creator. He's not someone who's going to play the pass before the pass. In fact, I think that's a bit of a weakness of Marcus Rashford's game, is as a creative force. So that raises questions about what did Barcelona actually want out of this deal? Did they just want someone to drop into their squad risk-free who can play a number of positions? I think that's ultimately what it is. But Nico Williams, I mean, I'm disappointed. I'd rather it was Williams who Barcelona had signed over Marcus Rashford. That to me is the more exciting deal. And yes, there's a curiosity about Rashford and whether he can get back to his best levels again. But ultimately, he is going there to be a depth piece, whereas Nico Williams could have been like a difference maker in his own right and a bit of a superstar. It does raise questions about whether the scattergun approach of Barcelona in the transfer window is back. That they've just seen a big name, a player who doesn't fit Hansi Flick's approach, who they're going to have to make one of the highest paid players at the club. They don't have a way to register him at the moment, and they've just put pen to paper before they've had time to think about it. It all happened very quickly, and it raises questions of Rashford, and I think it also raises questions of Barcelona as a club.
I think of all of the clubs out there, strangely, I think I have the most like bias against Barcelona. I think they're the team I root for the least. And I just want to acknowledge that before I go further on the financial side, because that is the main reason why I have issues with Barcelona. I feel like they have this Mesquite club identity, and at the same time, they need to clear out around, I believe, 28 million euros to be able to register Marcus Rashford. That's the best accounting from The Athletic. They have already moved on a few different players, and then they are trying to basically force more out the door. And the prime example of that would be Marc-Andre ter Stegen, their goalkeeper. They're basically trying to get him to leave or someone to come in for him because they've got two goalkeepers who they still can't register, including Szczesny, Wojciech Szczesny, who basically they have to clear out more before they can bring those two in. And you would assume they will be the priority for registration because otherwise Barcelona don't have like more than one goalkeeper or two goalkeepers. So with ter Stegen, though, they want him to move. He had already adjusted his contract, so he, I think, deferred payment for a couple of years so that he didn't kind of cause them a huge financial hit. So part of the reason why he doesn't want to leave is because they owe him a lot of money, and he doesn't, if he moves to a new club, there's questions as to whether or not they have to pay that money back. And so here's the guy who like made a sacrifice for this club, is still injured, I should note, but made sacrifices for this club and is now sort of being unceremoniously shown out the door. And that feels like a thing that happens time and time again with Barcelona. You are the savior of that club until you're not, and then you are very much not in their good graces anymore. And it does seem like they're going to have to force out a few more players to make this situation happen, or they will have to get intervention from the Spanish government again, which is how they were eventually able to register all of their players last year. And that in and of itself is probably not the best look for La Liga and for Spain in general. So it's a really murky situation. They are trying to, for like better way of putting it, pull more levers. They're trying to kind of like sell like selling rights to certain percentages of the seats at the new Camp Nou. They're trying to do a lot of different stuff to find ways to have some financial creativity. And it should be noted, I think they have claimed there's a 100 million euro investment that is coming in that hasn't kind of hit the books, so isn't being factored into things. So they may end up not needing to move a ton of players at all, but it's a good sort of representation of the murky financial situation in which Barcelona find themselves.
Maybe this will be the window that they finally force Frenkie de Jong out of the door. They've widened the door and everything, so he can't actually cling to the frames as they're forcing him out of the Camp Nou.
They've like adjusted his girlfriend's Instagram algorithm to show like how fun shopping is in Manchester these days, and whatever else it is that kept them in Barcelona the first time around.
Yeah, there's a new food court at the Metro Centre in Newcastle.
That's it.
You'll love it.
That's exactly it. So, I mean, Graham, the way it goes with Barcelona is kind of the way I expect things to go always with Inter Miami. My assumption is that they will find a way to register everybody and have the squad that they would like to have, if not for the start of the season, then by the time the transfer window closes.
They always do. By murky means, I mean, last time this time last year, they registered Dani Olmo through a kind of loophole in the rules that was about injured players.
Yep.
It was Andreas Christensen who was injured, and so maybe someone at Barcelona is going around with a wrench at training. Iñaki Peña.
And I think it's also worth noting that I believe that loophole has to now hit the books this season. I think I'm correct in saying. So now Christensen's wages for last year hit the books for now, and so that puts them in even more of a financial hole.
Great stuff.
It's just, I mean, that's what it seems to be, and that's maybe where Barcelona like thrive at present, is finding all these loopholes in different ways to kind of stay financially solvent while keeping their structure as it is. But it creates a very chaotic situation, one in which we assume things will end up working out okay. If only they could sign some sort of record-breaking kit deal, Graham. Maybe that would make the difference for them, as it will for Man City. I don't know. Will it make a difference at all? Who knows?
Yeah, Barcelona should get on that. It would be nice for them to have a £1 billion new kit deal like City do with Puma. That was a deal that was announced late last week. As I've already kind of mentioned, the top line is this new deal is worth £1 billion, so it's a guaranteed amount that City will receive over 10 years, works out £100 million a year. Up significantly from the £65 million a year they were previously receiving. It's a record kit deal for a Premier League club. Barcelona and Real Madrid already, so Barcelona actually already have a more lucrative kit deal. They're the two most lucrative kit deals in the world, but it's the first time that a kit deal has reached, like, in total, $1 billion. And interesting to note, or at least it's interesting to me, maybe not interesting to anyone else, Puma are now basically the kit supplier to City Football Group around the world, with the exception of NYCFC, who are tied into MLS's Adidas deal, which obviously covers the whole league. But this sets a new precedent in the Premier League. Liverpool have a new kit deal that is going to come into effect in a couple of weeks, or in 1 week actually, on the 1st of August. It's with Adidas. It's worth £60 million a season. So yeah, this is a lot more for Man City. And the real impact for Man City is, and I was reading about this in the Guardian, I hadn't quite considered this, but the biggest impact is this is huge for them in their battle against the Premier League regarding associated party transactions. So for anyone who doesn't know, for listeners who don't know this story, APTs as they're known, these are sponsorship deals that the Premier League has accused City of inflating due to their close links with companies like Etihad Airways and a bank, an Abu Dhabi bank, which name has escaped me. They are both owned by the same family as Man City, the implication being those deals are artificially inflated to then allow Man City to get around things like FFP and PSR. And City are now in the midst of a legal challenge against the changes to those rules that were voted through in November that would make their life more difficult. And this huge Puma deal will theoretically help them benchmark some of those other deals to prove that they are actually fair value. So they can point to this record-breaking Premier League deal that they now have with Puma and say, well, actually, Etihad paying us a record-breaking amount for the stadium rights and the shirt name, the shirt sponsor and everything is actually fair value. And that's actually where the biggest knock-on of this deal could be for Man City.
A couple questions, Graham. As far as you know, are there limits on the number of shirts you can have a season? Like, can you only have the first, second, and then the
Napoli says
third?
no.
Okay, because that was actually going back to Barcelona for a minute. I think I was joking about the shirt deal, and then I remembered. I think they've just sold the sponsorship to their training shirts to the government of DR Congo, I think, for a large amount of money.
Okay.
So they seem to be running out of things that they can sell sponsorship on. But if they released a fifth kit, maybe that's where they can drum up some interest. And if...
Yeah, but like a NASCAR.
Yes, just we're going to have the one kit. It's going to have 45 different sponsors. I mean, that is the Liga MX route. You got to get everybody on there in some degree. My question from a City perspective when it comes to this deal... Obviously great on the financial side. Obviously great when it comes to the associated party transactions. My question for you, a lover of kits, is this a good deal for Man City in that have we enjoyed what Puma have done with them?
No.
Okay.
No, we have not. Puma make the worst kits. So I would say
Has that always been the case?
As long as I can remember, yeah. I think there was a World Cup where Puma had some decent kits. Was that maybe 2010 South Africa World Cup? I think they had decent kits, but besides that, Puma historically have had terrible designs. So
what's the best thing?
Sorry, City
what's
fans.
the best thing they've done? Is it still just Puma Kings? Is that the number one thing that Puma have done well?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, Puma footballs, like the actual soccer balls themselves, are not bad, but the kits are bad. Do you remember those ones they made a couple seasons ago that had the club name just written across the front of it? Man,
yeah,
that was bad.
Somebody gave a lot of responsibility to an intern who who had lied on their resume about how good they are with like design in Photoshop or something, and just rolled with it. Yeah, they need to maybe break some new ground, find some interesting stuff. Is it Hummel that you wish had spent the $100 million?
Always on me, just on sponsoring me. I'll do it for 50.
Does this also mean that Liverpool will now have to go back to Adidas and ask them for a little bit more money? How hurt are Liverpool going to be by this?
Yeah, see that legally binding contract that we signed just a few months ago?
More, please.
Yeah, we need more than that, just so that we can sign
every player in the world?
Every player in the world, yeah, on the basis of their transfer speculation.
Yeah, before we call the bulletined, let's talk for a moment about Liverpool. Since last we spoke, we were... I feel pretty confident in the reporting that it was maybe Isak was going to go to Liverpool, but maybe he was going to stay at Newcastle, and then Newcastle were going to bring in Ekitike as well, and maybe they would play together, but maybe he was also sort of being brought in, Ekitike, so that Isak could be on the move. Now, Graham, it's a whole different world.
Yeah, last week it felt like deciding which club was going to have Isak and which club was going to have Ekitike between Liverpool and Newcastle. And Liverpool, they listened to that episode and were personally offended.
It seems that way.
And have decided to sign Ekitike for something like 79 million euros and are also interested in signing Alexander Isak. Alexander Isak, who has not travelled to the Far East with Newcastle today on their pre-season tour. The reason that Newcastle have given is that he is nursing some sort of injury.
Yeah.
I think that's a generous reading on their part of what's happening, because Alexander Isak has now been briefed to people like David Ornstein and basically everyone that he wants a move away.
He's got a headache after trying to calculate how many zeros he wants in his paycheck, and it was too much for him, so he needs a little bit of time.
Yeah, he needs some of that 60 million a season Adidas money that Liverpool are going to get from the 1st of August. And so, yeah, that seems like that is going to be the saga between now and the end of the window. I don't expect a quick resolution because Newcastle are clearly going to dig their heels in. The other thing that we should mention is there's Saudi Premier League interest in Alexander Isak as well. I think his agent has held a couple of discussions with Al Hilal and Al Ittihad. I don't know whether that's just purely to drum up some interest from Liverpool, who have a long-standing interest in Isak, make them feel like they have to move quickly. But Liverpool came into this window, they wanted to move on Darwin Núñez, they wanted a replacement at centre forward, and then the tragic reality, of course, for Liverpool is that with Diogo Jota's passing, they may also be in the market for another forward, that might explain why they could potentially sign Ekitike and also Alexander Isak in the same window that they have already signed Florian Wirtz and Jeremy Frimpong and Milos Kerkez. We should just give Liverpool the Premier League trophy now, I think.
Yeah. And it's very much to their credit that I think with other clubs, when this type of spending occurs, there is a question of is this them crisis spending because they feel like they have to make up some ground, they have to stay relevant? how are they financially able to do this? What sort of levers are they going to have to pull in the future? But with Liverpool, it feels like, I'm sure they have a way to do this. I'm sure they'll figure it out. I'm sure it's smart signings. And I'm even inclined to say that it's really smart business that they didn't massively reinvest. They reinvested a little bit when Slot takes over. But it feels to me like a situation in which the ownership is like, we're going to see how things go for a year. Then we'll decide what we need to do. Do we stick with the manager? Do we bring in players? Do we clear out? What's it going to look like? And it feels like having won the Premier League, they think, okay, we were in a pretty strong position, but now we've got to kind of keep building the squad, keep that talent going, maybe challenge for more things on more fronts. Seems like they're in a pretty good position to do so with the business they've done so far.
Do you know what it reminds me of, Taylor? I'm going to remind you of better times here as a Manchester United fan. It reminds me of the window that Manchester United went crazy, and they got, was it Tevez, Berbatov, Hargreaves, Nani, and Anderson? I think all in one go. And that was the most incredible Premier League transfer window that I could ever remember. This feels like very reminiscent of that window. Yeah,
they did like 3 of those on the first day of the window, too. So it was just like, whoa, okay. They're spending some money. And in Liverpool's case, they've done that, and it feels like they're going to keep doing that. And it feels like they're going to bring in more. That seems to be the speculation, that they're going to focus in on Isak and see if they can make something happen. But they are also evaluating other areas and other opportunities to further invest and further strengthen. I think they're going to be pretty good this season. Yeah. I have some concerns for Newcastle, who seem to just be missing on every single target for very different reasons depending on that target, but they haven't really been successful in the market despite having theoretically some money to play with, but maybe with the wage structure with PSR, less money than one might expect.
Yeah, it's an interesting one with Newcastle, and they have struck out on basically every major target that they've had this summer. Bryan Mbeumo was their number one pick. Of course, he goes to Manchester United. I think Cunha as well was someone that they had an interest in. He also goes to Manchester United. João Pedro was the next player that they then targeted. Chelsea snapped him up. It looked like James Trafford was a done deal. Obviously, the Burnley goalkeeper, young kind of English goalkeeper that Newcastle saw as their next number one. It now seems like he might be going back to Man City with Ederson potentially on his way out this summer. So it's an interesting one with Newcastle, where they've got all the money in the world, but yet seem incapable of. And obviously PSR is a big factor here for them. But it seems like there's more than that going on. I don't know whether it's the upheaval. I can accredited Newcastle just last week with staying consistent while moving through like different sporting directors. Maybe this is the impact. Maybe we're seeing that inconsistency in their inability to get some of these deals over the line.
Poor, plucky underdog Newcastle with their Champions League money and their monumental rise to the top of the table. If you're predicting right now, Graham, what's your top 4?
Liverpool.
In no order.
Arsenal,
I'll give it to you. Just like give me your exact box 4.
Liverpool, Arsenal, City, Chelsea.
Yep.
Which may have been, was that last season's top 4 potentially? Can't remember.
No, I think Newcastle were in there, right? Because that's how they're in the Champions League.
But keep in mind that 5 qualified for the Champions League, or did last season. I just can't remember which way around it was. But
all right,
yeah, I can see Newcastle. I mean, particularly if they lose Isak, it'd be a huge blow. I can see them sliding down the table a little bit. They need to get some big signings in
Garnacho.
To stop that from happening. For how much? 80 million?
Yeah, probably 90. I mean, there is a point in which like that does flip, and there is a little bit of leverage there if you're Manchester United. Of like, hey, you guys have missed on everybody. You can have him, but you do have to pay market value now.
That would be classic Manchester United if they actually had a bit of leverage and then priced themselves out of a deal.
$6 billion. Fingers crossed.
That was the Jesse Lingard thing, right? Where his loan at West Ham actually went well, and then West Ham were like, okay, we want to sign him permanently. Manchester United were like, 50 million.
They're like, our opening offer was 8, so no, we're good. Well, it's been a very interesting week, Graham. It's very lovely to have you back. I look forward to the Euros, the Euros final. I look forward to talking about that with you next week, where we will have, I believe, everybody back, at least for a little bit of time. For now, thank you for talking it all out with me, my friend.
Thank you, Taylor Rockwell.
Listeners, thank you all so much as well. Be sure to check out the Patreon, where we do still have a bunch of good content going up over there. But for now, thank you all again for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.